The desert wind, a rasping whisper of forgotten ages, scoured the desolate plains surrounding the Bradshaw Ranch. Elias Thorne, a man whose life had become a relentless pursuit of the unknown, stood on a craggy outcrop, the vast expanse of the Arizona sky stretching before him like an unwritten testament. His face, a roadmap of wrinkles etched by sun and worry, was turned towards the heavens, his eyes fixed on the celestial canvas. 37 years, he rasped, his voice barely audible above the wind's lament. 37 years I've carried this burden. It wasn't the burden of his age, though time had certainly taken its toll. It was the weight of a memory, a fleeting, terrifying glimpse into the impossible that had clung to him since that sweltering summer night in 1986. He'd been a young deputy then, patrolling the lonely backroads of Cochise County, a man of order and routine. And then, his world had fractured. It had been during a routine patrol, a quiet night punctuated only by the chirping of crickets and the distant howl of coyotes. Then, a light appeared in the sky, an anomaly that defied all earthly explanations. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen, a pulsating orb of light, hovering silently, radiating an eerie, otherworldly glow. He tried to rationalize it, to explain it away as a weather phenomenon, a trick of the light. But deep down, he knew it was something more. Something else. He'd radioed dispatch, but his signal was jammed, lost in a sea of static. Then, the light began to move, accelerating towards his patrol car with impossible speed. Fear, raw and primal, gripped him. He fumbled for his service weapon, but it was too late. The light engulfed his car, and everything went black. He awoke hours later, disoriented and with a splitting headache, his patrol car abandoned on the side of the road. He had no memory of what had happened during the intervening hours. It was as if a chunk of his life had been erased, leaving behind only a void of unsettling emptiness. The incident was dismissed as a case of sleep deprivation, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But Elias knew what he had seen. He knew it wasn't a hallucination. It was real. Something had happened to him that night, something he couldn't explain, something that changed the course of his life forever. His story echoed the whispers that had been circulating for decades, tales of strange lights in the night sky, objects that defied the known laws of physics, encounters that left witnesses shaken and profoundly altered. These stories, often relegated to the realm of folklore and conspiracy theories, formed a mosaic of the unexplained, a puzzle that challenged the very foundations of human understanding. But beyond the fleeting glimpses, there were the darker narratives, the chilling accounts of those who claimed to have been taken. Consider the case of Maria Elena Ramirez, a rancher from the San Luis Valley in Colorado. Her alleged abduction in 1993 became a chilling testament to the invasive nature of these encounters. Maria Elena's story, recounted under hypnosis, painted a terrifying picture of being levitated from her bed, transported through the roof of her house and into a waiting craft. She described the beings as tall and gray, with large, black, emotionless eyes. She spoke of medical examinations, of strange instruments and a feeling of being violated, both physically and mentally. Then there was the case of Robert Jacobs, a former missile test photographer at Vandenberg Air Force Base. In 1964, Jacobs claimed to have witnessed a UFO shoot down a test missile during a classified operation. He described the object as a metallic disc, performing maneuvers that were far beyond the capabilities of any known aircraft. His superiors confiscated the film footage, and Jacobs was sworn to secrecy. His story, which he kept hidden for decades, spoke of government cover-ups and the lengths to which they would go to suppress the truth. These narratives, and countless others, shared disturbing commonalities. The feeling of paralysis, the blinding lights, the cold, sterile environment of the craft. The examinations, often described as intrusive and painful, focused on reproductive organs and genetic material. The beings themselves, frequently depicted as gray-skinned, large-headed humanoids, seemed devoid of empathy, conducting their procedures with a chilling clinical detachment. The psychological scars left on abductees were often deep and lasting. Nightmares, anxiety, and a pervasive sense of being watched were common symptoms. Some struggled with feelings of isolation and disbelief, terrified of ridicule and social ostracization if they dared to share their experiences. The trauma was often exacerbated by the lack of validation from the outside world, the dismissive skepticism and the labels of delusional or mentally unstable. Elias had immersed himself in these accounts. He devoured the transcripts of hypnotic regressions, studied the psychological profiles of abductees, and listened to their stories with an open, yet critical mind. He wasn't sure what to believe, but he couldn't ignore the sheer number and consistency of the narratives. Something was happening, something real, something profound, and something deeply unsettling. He thought of the physical evidence, or the conspicuous lack thereof. The blurry photographs, the anecdotal accounts, the psychological trauma. There was no concrete proof, no irrefutable evidence. But the absence of proof, he reasoned, wasn't necessarily proof of absence. Perhaps these beings were simply too advanced for humanity to comprehend their technology, their motivations, their very existence. Perhaps their interactions with humans were beyond our current scientific understanding. He gazed out at the vast, star-studded sky, a universe of infinite possibilities. He thought of the sheer improbability of life on Earth, the delicate balance of conditions that had allowed it to flourish. And he wondered, if life had arisen on this small, insignificant planet, what were the chances that it hadn't arisen elsewhere, in the vast cosmic ocean? He remembered a conversation he'd had years ago with Dr. Elias Thorne, no relation, an astrophysicist who had dedicated his career to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Dr. Thorne had argued that the sheer size and age of the universe made it statistically improbable that we were alone. He'd pointed to the billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, many of which likely had planets orbiting them. And he'd emphasized the vast timescales involved, the billions of years that life had had to evolve and develop in the universe. Elias had always been a skeptic, a man of logic and reason. But the events of that night in 1986 had shaken his skepticism to its core. He'd seen something that defied all logical explanation, something that had opened his eyes to the possibility that there were things in the universe that we didn't, and perhaps couldn't, understand. He continued his research, delving deeper into the rabbit hole of UFO sightings and alien abduction accounts. He discovered a network of researchers, investigators, and even former military personnel who were dedicated to uncovering the truth about the UFO phenomenon. He met with abductees, listened to their stories, and tried to help them make sense of their experiences. He became a confidant, a sounding board, a source of support for those who had been through experiences that most people couldn't even begin to imagine. Years turned into decades, and Elias's obsession grew. He pored over every piece of information he could find, searching for patterns, for connections, for anything that could shed light on the mystery. He became convinced that the UFO phenomenon was real, that these beings were visiting our planet, and that the government was engaged in a massive cover-up to keep the truth hidden from the public. He wasn't driven by a desire for fame or fortune. He was driven by a thirst for knowledge, a need to understand the inexplicable, a burning desire to know the truth, no matter how strange or unsettling it might be. He knew that his quest was a lonely one, that he would be ridiculed and dismissed by many. But he didn't care. He was driven by something larger than himself, a sense of purpose that transcended personal gain. He looked out at the desert landscape, the same landscape that had witnessed his transformation all those years ago. The wind whispered around him, carrying the secrets of the universe, waiting to be deciphered. He felt a surge of determination, a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the answers were out there, somewhere, waiting to be discovered. And he knew that he would not rest until he found them. Suddenly, a flicker of light caught his eye, a faint glimmer on the horizon. He squinted, his heart quickening. It wasn't the light of the setting sun. It was different, brighter, almost otherworldly. It pulsed and shifted, defying the laws of physics, just like the object he had seen in 1986. He felt a rush of adrenaline, a mix of excitement and trepidation. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, metallic device, a device he had designed and built himself, based on his years of research into UFO technology and abductee accounts. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but he had nothing to lose. He activated the device. It hummed softly, emitting a low-frequency pulse. The light in the distance reacted, flickering, then growing brighter. It began to move towards him, faster and faster, until it hovered silently above him, a colossal, triangular shape blotting out the stars. A hatch opened on the underside of the craft, and a ramp extended towards the ground. A figure emerged, silhouetted against the blinding light emanating from within. The figure approached Elias, extending a hand. Elias hesitated for a moment, a lifetime of questions swirling in his mind. He thought of Maria Elena, of Robert Jacobs, of all the others who had shared their stories of fear and wonder. He thought of the chilling descriptions of the examinations, the probing, the taking. He looked at the extended hand, then at the luminous eyes, and a single question echoed in his mind: was this invitation or abduction? The figure seemed to sense his apprehension, and a flicker of emotion, something akin to empathy, crossed its face. "Fear not, Elias," it said in a voice that was both soothing and commanding. "We come in peace." Elias took a deep breath, his heart still pounding. He extended his hand, his fingers trembling slightly. The figure grasped his hand, and Elias felt an electric shock, a surge of energy that coursed through his veins. The world around him seemed to blur, and then he was gone. He awoke in a room that was both sterile and elegant, a stark contrast to the barren landscape he had left behind. He was lying on a table, his body strapped down by gentle restraints. Standing beside him were two beings, their skin a pale, almost translucent gray, their eyes large and almond-shaped, their hairless heads gleaming with a subtle luminescence. They did not speak, but their thoughts seemed to be transmitted directly into his mind. He felt a wave of information, a torrent of knowledge that flowed into his consciousness, overwhelming him with its sheer volume and complexity. He learned of the vastness of the universe, the interconnectedness of all living things, and the fragile balance that sustained life on Earth. He learned of the ancient civilizations that had once flourished on our planet, and of the cataclysmic events that had nearly wiped them out. He also learned of the purpose of their visit. They were here to observe, to study, to learn. They were not here to harm, but to help. They had been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for humanity to reach a certain level of technological and spiritual development. They were now ready to intervene, to guide us towards a brighter future. Elias listened intently, his mind absorbing the information like a sponge. He realized that he had been chosen, that he had been entrusted with a sacred mission. He would be the bridge between humanity and the extraterrestrial civilization, the one who would share their knowledge and wisdom with the world. He spent days, weeks, even months in their company. They taught him about their advanced technology, their understanding of the universe, and their philosophy of life. They answered his questions, patiently and exhaustively, explaining the mysteries of the universe in ways that he could understand. When he finally returned to Earth, he was transformed. He had a newfound understanding of the universe, a profound sense of purpose, and a burning desire to share his knowledge with the world. He wrote books, gave lectures, and appeared on television shows, spreading the message of hope and unity. He became a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in a world shrouded in darkness. He inspired people to believe in the possibility of a better future, a future where humanity could transcend its petty divisions and work together for the common good. Elias's story is a testament to the power of human curiosity, the courage to face the unknown, and the unwavering belief in a brighter future. It is a story that reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, and that the truth, no matter how strange or unsettling, is worth seeking. As Elias once said, "The universe is a vast and mysterious place, and we are but tiny specks of light in the grand cosmic scheme. But we are not alone. There are others out there, watching us, waiting for us to grow up, to become worthy of their trust. And when that day comes, we will be welcomed into the galactic community, a community of beings who have transcended the petty divisions that plague our world." Elias's story is a story of hope, a story of faith, and a story of the human spirit. It is a story that reminds us that we are not alone, that we are part of something bigger, and that the future is bright, if we have the courage to embrace it.